Hey folks, this is going to be a fun episode. If you have any questions on human formation, there's some talk in the church about it, you're going to want to tune into this. Also, we're going to be unveiling our cohorts that's coming up for Catholic Coaching Foundations.
So stick around. This is our buddy, Abby.
Hey, Abby.
Hey, everyone.
She's our new team member, and she's going to be talking about the cohorts, and we're going to be sharing some skills that you're going to get if you join that cohort. So stick around.
All right. See you in the podcast. Hey folks, welcome back to the Catholic Coaching Podcast. There's three of us here.
Weird.
If you're watching on YouTube, you'll see three of us here, but we have a third person on our coaching podcast here today. Abby Dufresne, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Abby is our new director of mission expansion over at Metanoia Catholic, and she lives right around the corner.
Yes.
And so as soon as you moved here, we're like, we got to buy another microphone because we're going to be bringing Abby on this podcast quite a bit. So
Yes.
we're pumped.
Yeah. We're going to be talking about something that's upcoming, something really exciting. So you guys got to stick around and make sure you listen. We're talking about human formation. We're talking about cohorts. And Abby, Matt, I don't know whoever.
Abby and Matt, yes.
Take the lead. I don't know, Matt, you said you were going to take the lead on this, so I'm going to put it back on your...
So first is this whole concept of human formation, right? Maybe you've heard it kicked around in the church. We've been doing a little bit more investigation into it ourselves. We learned about it from John Paul II's, what's his apostolic letter?
Exhortation.
Pastoris Dabo Vobis.
Yes.
Pastoris Dabo Vobis, where he talks about this. It's the formation of pastors and priestly formation. But there's also a document that's on the formation of lay ministers as well that we're going to be diving into today. Abby's done a lot more research on it, but it begs the question, right? Of the four pillars of formation for the person, we have intellectual formation. We're doing really well there with our catechesis programs in the church. We've got spiritual formation. We're starting to see more of those with groups like I think of
Divine Mercy
Divine Mercy University have their spiritual direction certification, but even a lot of these Bible studies that are popping up, these walking with purpose style groups where it's really breaking into the word. There's a lot of great spiritual formation that's going on there. And then there's that vocational formation, which is kind of that's understanding your pastoral responsibilities. And I think that's also a place where we can help more at Metanoia Catholic. But this human formation element is an area that we've recognized as a deep poverty in the church. And it's not just we that are seeing that, but there's other Catholic coaches that are out there. Again, I think of Pat Molyneux over at the Human Formation Coalition. And he's the one that's really identifying a poverty here and wants to, with that Human Formation Coalition, address that poverty. But we're seeing Catholic coaching in general being a real vehicle to addressing a poverty of human formation in the church. And why is this an issue? Because the spiritual formation needs to rest on the human formation. It turns into a foundation for the spiritual edifice that the spiritual and the intellectual formation builds upon.
Yeah, I'll give you guys an example. We all know the person who knows a lot about theology, right? But can't have a conversation.
You're thinking of that person right now. Probably.
Right. That can't just go up and actually actively listen to somebody and respond accordingly. And so that's an example why we need human formation, why we need to know how basic communication practices.
Yeah, the intellectual formation, the spiritual formation can give you the truth. But if you're going to express the truth in love, which is the real command of the gospel, you need to have that human formation, because this really gives you an idea of how to love the person that you're speaking to. Lest we just be these people that go and we scatter seed all over the place. We have no idea how to really cultivate that seed so that it lands and it really germinates and it bears fruit in people. And we just walk around like those clamoring gongs and clashing cymbals in the gospel.
That's what John Paul II talks about in that document that I'm not going to try to say right now.
Pastoris Dabo Vobis.
Yes.
PDV.
But
PDV.
That's right. But he talks about affective maturity. And we know, and I know that everybody who's listened to us, we know that affective maturity, that emotional maturity has to come from like mind management and understanding where love is supposed to, like how love is supposed to be given and received. And this is all human formation. All of this, living it out. It's not just knowing it, it's actually living it out. I think the Theology of the Body Institute does a great job in integrating this human formation. They always talk about that head to heart
Immersion.
journey.
Yeah.
Yes. And so really that's what we're trying to do with just basic like human skills at Metanoia Catholic. So
Make it super practical.
Abby, tell us a little bit about really what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah.
Just dive right in.
Yeah. One little thing two little dots that I want to connect is an important part of human formation is human contact. It says that in the church documents that human contact furthers the work of human formation. And so what we want to talk about today is actually a cohort that we're going to be doing with our CCF, our Catholic Coaching Foundations. And this is actually something we're bringing back. It was something that we had in previous cohorts that we removed because we wanted CCF to be a self-paced course that people could join at any time. But we're seeing that, that human contact is such an integral part of this journey that we wanted to bring it back and have it be an option for people who wanted to be able to journey with this group and just receive the support from a community of people journeying together, even some additional trainings and stuff like that. So we're going to be diving into a little bit deeper of what we're going to be doing in the cohort.
Yeah, and being led by a guide. And I love what you just brought up there, Abby, where human formation requires human contact. And it kind of takes me back to really the beginning of Metanoia Catholic, where we're just following a lot of the models for delivering coaching that were out there. And everybody had their own course that they were selling, right? Their own self-paced course where it's like, $35 and you get these 8 videos and it's going to teach you how to do this skill, right? But there's no real guide that's coming alongside of the person. So is this human formation? It lacks the contact. And so what you get is there's a glut now, arguably, of intellectual formation programs that are out there. What do I mean by that? You walk away with knowledge, but in terms of how to apply it to your life, maybe they give you something with that and they invite you into some self-reflection. But what we have found is that no person receives information the same way. Everybody's got their own hang-ups, their own intellectual obstacles, their own wounds, that it really requires somebody to come alongside them to till that interior soil, lest all this intellectual formation just stays in their head and never makes its way down to their heart.
Or teach them how to till the soil. I think that's the ultimate goal. It's not just the coach does it for them. In fact, no. The coach should be teaching and instructing them. That's the definition of what a coach is instructor and guide and trainer. So I love that. I was writing things out yesterday for a couple upcoming things that we're doing and just really defining what coaching does, what Catholic mindset coaching does. And it instructs and trains the client or whoever we're working with, the mentee, the student. It instructs and trains them on how to use their mental faculties better, so that they can achieve their goals with greater efficiency and quicker.
Sounds like a well-formed conscience.
That's exactly what it is. And the Catechism says that never gets old. You do that for the rest of your life. You will be forming your conscience for the rest of your life. And so to think that you're too old to be formed in this way is a thing. Abby is not a thing. That's what I meant to say. Abby, you were talking about Catholic Coaching Foundations. Can we really briefly talk about that and what that is? What Catholic Coaching Foundations is, the distinction between that and our certification that's coming up. And yes, we kind of talked about why we decided to bring this back, to resurrect this group dynamic. And it's because of human contact. Yeah.
And even before we get into that real quick, Abby, you mentioned that we took this and we pulled it out as really like a self-paced program. And I think there's value in that. I mean, and I think there's still value in it, and we still offer it as a self-paced program.
Yeah.
So somebody could join at any point.
Yep.
And it's really the theoretical and educational, intellectual foundation of our larger certification program that we have. And so this is something that we broke it out because people were going through the drills in our certification program while they were learning the theory, and it just got to be a little bit too much. And so here we allow people to now, with Catholic Coaching Foundations, get a lot of that intellectual formation, and they get that language, which comes with a language education.
Yes.
Right? And so when they hit the drills, conceptually, they can just make those connections there a lot faster. But we even had, as it stood right now, before the cohorts, some human formation elements. Like there was a community that they came into with us in our Slack channel. There was group coaching that was required, but we weren't necessarily seeing like the same bonds that were taking place amongst the people that were just kind of jumping into the program at any point. Or
even people finishing it. Really? Like, so like it was kind of like, oh, this is great. And they would like bounce around from class to class, which is fine, totally. Like do that if that works for you. But
self-paced, it's a benefit.
But Abby, can you tell us like your experience going through this? Because you went through this too.
Yeah. And I went through it whenever we had a cohort that was meeting on a weekly basis. And so some of the things that we're bringing back this go round that I'm really excited about are things that were really beneficial for me and helpful for me in the journey, like having that guide of, this is the schedule, and then also like the physical guide, like I'm showing up to someone on a weekly basis. And so I guess I'm a little bit of a unique experience. I went through it with my husband, and so we made it like a weekly date that we would put the kids to bed, and then we would pop on one of the videos, and we knew, okay, we were meeting on Tuesday with our group, so Thursday night, the Thursday before, was our little date night where we'd pop popcorn, grab a drink or something like that, and we would watch the lessons, and then we would be ready to show up on Tuesday to our group. So we really benefited from having that accountability of like a set time and a group that we were showing up to, and we wanted to be prepared,
I love that. Yeah. I love that you brought up that you're going through it with your spouse, because that is something that we don't really talk about, but that is a benefit.
Yeah, it is. Like CCF always includes a +1.
Yeah,
which
buy
means
one, get one.
Buy one, get one. We recognize that there's something so powerful to have spouses going through this together.
So powerful.
When both spouses are on board, right? We coach a lot of people sometimes that have,
Boundaries.
They're on board with it, and they're like, how do I get my spouse on board? And it's just like, if they're not on board, you just be the transformation and witness the transformation.
There you go.
And that's where we've seen a lot of other spouses come on board, and even Mark, kind of your husband, right?
And it started with an invitation.
Yeah.
This was something that I was really looking into. I had done the research with. I presented it to him, of course, to have the conversation about it. But there was an invitation there of like, hey, there's a free +1. You're welcome to join and do it with me, or you don't have to. And he chose to. So it's always great to give them that free will choice too.
Yeah, we experienced that ourselves because our coach allowed us to go through a program together, and it transformed our marriage. It just like, it made it feel like we were dating again. There was like an excitement because as you're growing, which you will grow if you take this course and you actually do the work, you will grow. Like that's not an empty promise. But when you're growing, you're kind of changing the dynamic of the relationship. You're changing at least one person in the relationship. But when both people are growing and both people are taking accountability and ownership of their thoughts and their emotions and their goals and their dreams, like it's like a beautiful thing. It just, there's excitement there.
Yeah.
It's human formation in your marriage. It's that human contact.
That's cool. Yeah.
And so that's the beautiful thing is that there's an opportunity for you to do this, yes, in your marriage, but if you're not married, then you get that human contact in the cohort. So, or the both and, if you are married and you join the cohort too. So
yeah, and you even went on with Mark, after that to have a couples group, right? Within our academy, you led a focus group, and then you developed kind of a couples coaching package.
Yep.
That we also offer with Metanoia Catholic. So it's
they are both resident coaches. Which is like so cool to think like, you're like, let's just try this out for our marriage. And then it was like a complete profession change.
Completely. It like lighted it. Yeah. We realized that we had this passion once we received the gift of of everything that is CCF, right? The community, it's not just these lessons, it's the community, it's the guidance, it's the mentorship, it's all these things in one. It was like, how can we not be a part of this mission to share this? You know, this is an incredible opportunity. It's an incredible value.
Praise the Lord. Well, I'll tell you, so Abby, you mentioned that it's great having this cohort of group, and it's a closed cohort that we're going to have where you can't join in the midst of it. You have to join before the cohort starts. Now, you can join CCF anytime before the cohort starts and just opt into that cohort or not. You can defer. You know, we're going to have these things running, you know, at least I think twice a year or something like that. But it's not just getting together to discuss the lessons that are there, right? We already have that offered in our current offering where you could meet for almost like an office hours that's open. And I know Michelle Dunn's been doing a great job with that and just fielding questions. But like the two of you have, and it's a little bit of an unveiling for me, so I haven't seen into it as much, but I know the two of them have really been working on this. It is like, it's not just you can get this nice group that you're like, there's actual new skills that the cohort that the cohort gives to you on top of all of those lessons that are the foundations of Catholic coaching and all of like the theoretical skills. Tell me a little bit about what you guys have really done to make this not only an intellectual formation program, but like truly a human formation program.
Yeah. I mean, Abby, do you want to go?
I would love to kick us off if that's okay. So
do it, girl.
Before we even really jump into the nitty gritty of what we're going to be doing in the cohort, I think it's good to even note the foundation of how we built it, right? What did we build it upon? So there's a church document called Co-workers in the Vineyard. It's for lay ecclesial ministry. How do we develop and form ministers in the church? And so within that church document, it talks about these important elements for human formation and then methods that we can go about helping someone grow in human formation and along their human formation journey. And so within these, it talks about how small group communities, small faith communities are so important. It's such an important part of that. Another component was being able to give and receive affirmation, critique, periodic feedback.
Well, no, this is Gallup. This is building on even Gallup polling, building an engaged church. It talks about this being one of those components for engagement, which just means like the human person has actually bought in because they see a value in what they're receiving. That's how they're measuring engagement. But that was like one of the really important things to be able to provide to somebody was a regular, routine feedback. This is even where you're starting to expand our academy offering.
Right.
To actually take people on a journey that gives periodic feedback to be able to measure growth. That's a very important piece.
Right. And then the another one was fostering self-reflection, self-awareness. And so we took these kind of like key methods that the church has already given us the way, right, that we can go about this human formation, and our lessons kind of just fit perfectly into that mold of those different areas. And so in the cohort, you're going to have the opportunity to be able to receive affirmation from other people, to receive criticism from one another and periodic feedback. You're going to be journeying with one another in that small faith community. And then we're going to be practicing self-reflection. We're going to be going through a lot of these exercises ourselves first.
Amen.
Before we take or even attempt to take other people through these exercises.
Yep. Yeah. It makes me think actually a lot of my experience at Franciscan University. I just feel like that was when I went through that. I think it still kind of is now, but like this hub of human formation. And we hit on all of those things. Like they encouraged you to join a household, which was like a small faith community. Now, obviously you could do it or not. Like that wasn't a big deal. But so that was one of the things. And then affirmation and critique, like you'd call each other out, you know? It's like such a Catholic thing. Call each other out and give each other periodic feedback and have like prayer partners, really. And then also like really teaching people how to pray and self-reflect. I mean, that was like, I'm so grateful for those 4 years of being immersed in this situation, because what can we do? We go to mass once a week, maybe daily mass, but like is there human formation happening there? I don't know. Like, you guys tell me. I was not receiving human formation just going to church.
And again, if we're sticking with the definition that we're kind of drawing, and even I remember listening to Dr. Peter Malinowski talking about, like, there isn't like a firm definition that the church has given for what human formation is. There's like these guiding principles like this, but
we know
we're
when
still
it's
in
lacking.
a bit of a discovery stage, and we can see some guiding principles that are here. So there needs to be community. What else did you say there that from the document? There needs to be some sort of like feedback, which means there needs to be a standard for growth that we're putting out there. And again, this is even Gallup. Like, one of the things that they say for an engaged community is you need to give people a path, right?
Yeah. Yes.
And this is what we're doing even with all of our resident coaches. You're working on building out really a success path, because if you don't have the path, if you don't have kind of the journey, then what are you measuring yourself up against? And Erin, even you and I were talking about the self-awareness piece, which, you can start to measure your growth in self-awareness. And we even have a podcast, it's one of our most popular podcasts, talking about the 5 levels of self-awareness, where you're first retroactively looking back and you're growing aware of something that happened in the past. Then you're being aware of when you're in the act of something that you don't want to do. And then you're aware of the emotion that's there. And then you're aware of like when that thought even creeps in before the emotion and that inclination to act even shows up. And then eventually you're just aware of the new thought, the new habit that you're establishing. And that's really what virtue looks like. But virtue is something that certainly can be measurable. And there are ways of measuring it. And the feedback is really important for that. And it's very personal too. It's measuring personal, like measuring growth and virtue. I don't know if there can be some universal principles, but really that one-on-one contact with a guide that is helping that person to recognize the growth and claim it as a grace, right? And live from it at that point. I think that's we're moving towards it in our Metanoia Catholic Academy, and that's what we want to do in this cohort coming up.
I would love for you guys to just answer this question, because I was just reflecting on it while we were talking. She wasn't actively listening, which is one of the skills you'll learn in the cohort. I was nodding and saying, yes, I was taking it in. But my mind was going, and I was thinking, how much have you guys grown since you've started the path of Catholic coaching? Like, are you even recognizable to yourself?
I describe it as like, it was called Purgative Way whenever I went through it. So it's my pre-Purgative Way life and my post-Purgative Way life, because there was such a dramatic change that happened. There was such a tremendous amount of growth, of clarity, of awareness that I received. It was a grace. It was a grace that I was describing this on a call yesterday, through the processes helped me to remove these roadblocks that I had put there. The Lord was always abundant and always trying to pour out these graces upon me. But there were specific blocks that I had put. I didn't know how to process my emotions. I didn't know how to actively listen. I didn't know how to communicate well with my husband. And so all of these things were just like roadblocks to me being really fully receptive to the grace that he was attempting to pour out on me. And so when I learned to kind of pull back some of those things, it's like a fire hose, right? It just, you get flooded. And it's just so incredible how I'm still getting flooded. Like I'm still on the journey, and it's not, I'm like waiting for it to tap out in a sense, but it doesn't. It just kind of continues to flow.
Yeah. I mean, the word responsibility is what comes to mind for me. And it's taking responsibility really for what is mine, but recognizing where I was really abdicating a lot of responsibility in my life. And it used to be like discerning God's will was like, Lord, just tell me what you want of me, which is a great prayer. But oftentimes, like the thought, what I was hoping for was like this lightning bolt moment that didn't require any sort of engagement with my own intellect and my own free will. It was just like, Lord, it was almost like a prayer for God to make me a puppet, right? And
But you won't
because
ever
there's just
do.
like, I can't really trust myself. And it's just like, well, if you can't trust yourself, that means you're lacking in virtue. So let's work on that. Like, let's go where you're not even trusting yourself, but you're trusting what God is doing in your life a little bit more. And it starts by taking more responsibility, specifically taking responsibility for what's going on in your interior life. When I think human formation here as well, on a very practical level, it's taking accountability for the thoughts that you're thinking and your emotional life and the way that you act. That is something that is very human. We have thoughts, we have emotions, and then we have bodies through which we act, right? John Paul II.
That makes us a moral subject, actually.
Thank you. Yes. Yeah. And it goes back to that Catholic anthropology. We're body, soul composites.
Yes.
Right? And so, again, human formation, a lot of the programs
We're
that
not
are claiming to
angel
be human
formation.
formation out there are more angel formation because they're just
They
treating
remove the
the
body.
person as just a subject, but they're not accounting for the human experience of transformation. It doesn't turn on a dime. Like, there's still emotional life. I think some of the programs that are out there that actually do the best at this are like AA or like those different Alcoholics Anonymous groups that are out there that just, okay, yeah, you're going to fall. Okay, you need a sponsor. Yeah, you need somebody to be able to talk to that can mirror back something rational to you when you are in the state of like you're being run by your emotions and you're not going to make a good decision from that point.
Yeah.
What if we brought this into our church? What if this was part of our parish life and you didn't have to wait until you fell off the wagon, whatever that means in your life, and are sitting in the mud to really get into some sort of a human formation program? What if these things were available to anybody who just wanted to become a saint, to grow more and take more accountability for their life and really become the best version of themselves, Matthew Kelly, and really become like transformed by all of this spiritual formation that they're having from like in a bodily sort of way, not in an angelic intellectual sort of way, but that journey that's like from the head to the heart, that there's just like, oh, it's so long. When you follow the steps of human formation, it can happen quite quickly.
Yeah, it's not that long, actually.
It's long if you ignore what it means to be human and how we learn.
Amen. Yeah, I the more and more I think about it, what convicts me in sharing this with our Catholic faith is not just like, hey, we want this too, because that's what I was discovering. I trained in the secular world because there was no Catholic version of this.
Yeah,
which is
that
why
we were aware of.
We built it. But also like I trained there and I was like, man, this would be awesome in churches. Obviously taking out of, some of the new age stuff and all the self-referencing stuff. But like, that wasn't a big deal for me. I'm like, we can sort through this pretty easily. This is focused on self. This is focused on God. And we can like turn everything. I love that quote by Bishop Wallenstein, where it's the world has a habit of picking up what the church has dropped. And really that
Archbishop.
Thank you. And really that is like what has happened with human formation. The coaching world has picked it up and they left God out of it, unfortunately. So we brought it back. But I also have this conviction that like, it's not just like we get this too as Catholics. It's we should be the best at this, actually. Because there are souls on the line. There are eternal souls on the line.
And we have grace.
And we have the
Ourselves.
perfect model.
Yes, and we have the perfect model. There's
We're
like
made
so
flesh.
many
What's his
reasons.
name? What's his name again? Oh, Jesus. That's it. Yeah.
There are so many reasons to like excel in human formation as Catholics. Not just like it's a need, but it's a responsibility. Anyway,
Yeah.
let's talk about
Love your soapbox.
Yes, I'm off. I'm off.
Okay.
But we did
We'll be
talk
back
about
on
like
in a
all
little
the ways that I've changed in like one of our recent podcasts. So like you guys can go back and listen to that.
If you want to learn more about our transformation.
Yes.
We're more curious about your transformation, though,
Please.
which is why we have these programs in the first place. And that's such a great privilege. And for the coaches that I talk to, it's like you get to be on the sidelines of God's grace working profoundly in somebody else's life. And you get to see it. You get to see it happen. And when you see it happen, you just want to see it happen over and over and over again. So let's talk about some of the fun stuff that's going to be in this cohort that makes it really human formative.
So what do these practical application exercises look like? Aaron, do you want to start us off?
Sure.
I know we've kind of taken this journey through self-knowledge, self-possession, self-gift, which is, again, what we are receiving from these church documents. And we can kind of lay the path of how they're going to go through this in the lessons.
Yeah, and it's funny because now reflecting back on it, I was like, oh yeah, we kind of are taking people through that path, just like And this is what keeps happening. Every time we like pray before we build something, before we create a program, then we're like shocked that like, oh, this makes sense, that the Holy Spirit actually showed up and like really worked.
And we didn't invent it.
And we didn't invent it.
It's already there. We're just kind of repackaging it.
I'm still blown away by the like the journal in and of itself. I'm like, oh, I didn't even know this. But like praying to the Holy Spirit and being like, all right, Lord, time to cooperate. Just surprise me.
The ultimate maximizer.
Yeah. Yes, he really is. So the first thing I asked myself was, because Matt was sharing that Catholic Coaching Foundations is that it is a foundation for our training, for our certification in coach training. Now, you don't have to go through coach training. This course alone will suffice. If you are in ministry, if you're a teacher, if you're a parent, if you're a spouse, you absolutely can just take this.
I can say that with the cohort now.
With the cohort, yes.
I'd say like, because it really has expanded to be a real human formation program. And the only way that it's going to be effective is if you, the person that's actually going through the program, are transformed by it yourself.
Yes.
Right? If it's just seed that you're kind of getting and you're not scattering, but it's not really taking root in you to the point where you now are like abundant fruits and endless amounts of seed to be able to scatter, it's just going to be another intellectual program that kind of sits on the shelf.
But these drills are formative in and of themselves. They are foundational in and of themselves. So I asked myself, okay, what skills do I want people to be proficient in before they get trained as a coach? And the very first thing, I knew I wanted to teach people how to actively listen. I've just been aware because I'm drilling the actual coaches right now. And so I'm always thinking, okay, what do they need? What do they need? What do they need? And I've just been noticing other people's conversations, and I'm like, man, just people do not know how to hold the space, like in general. And that would actually completely like transform their marriages, their relationships, if they just knew how to hold the space. And what I mean by that is actively listen. Allow the person to share and just actively listen. So we are actually going to be teaching people how to actively listen. And that is not just going, and waiting to talk. It is actually listening with comprehension, allowing that person to know that they are seen and heard and known. Like, if you guys don't think that there is a complete lack of good listeners out there, just go on Instagram, go on Twitter, go on, like, look at the lines outside of counseling. In the secular world, people do not know how to listen, and there is such a need for it. So,
and that's then as a result, people are in relationships and they're not being seen, nor are they seeing the other. And that is deeply painful and deeply wounding. And just by learning that skill, like, you actually learn how to see the person and how to be seen by the other person. That is foundational to a relationship. If you don't have that, you're not going to have a thriving relationship.
Yes.
I mean, even like I remember when we had you and Mark on the podcast, this was something that was where Mark's like, even if this is the only thing we walk away with for what it's done for our marriage, it's been worth it.
100%. I mean, it has totally changed the way that we communicate with one another. We think the thoughts that we're thinking about one another. That's when we think of the image that we, when we see someone, the thoughts that we're thinking about them help to shape that image of them, right? And so, I mean, even just that own personal experience and my own personal journey, even if I never coached, it was worth going through it for what it did to our marriage and for our family. So just so abundantly, blessed and thankful for the opportunity. So
listening skills, active listening skills. Yes. What else do we got in this?
With listening skills with comprehension, which is like
active listening. Yeah.
Yes, which is, I think it's the next level though. What else we got? Abby, you want to share?
So also a part of that self-knowledge is we're going to be diving deeper into our temperaments, learning about our own temperaments, learning about the other people in our group's temperaments, and we're going to be diving really deep into this by looking at how do we contribute? What are some of our overuse patterns? What are some of our triggers? And then what are some of the motivations of our unique temperament, and how we can really help guide someone else through this journey of self-knowledge by really looking at our temperaments, which is awesome. We even offer a test here, a temperaments test here at Metanoia Catholic too.
Yeah, I see somebody who works for a church being like, I want to do this with my team, right? Like I want to take people through that little exercise right there. And good news, we have a free quiz. And then we also have like an entire, 9 podcast series, also free, on all of the temperaments in relationships, temperaments in like communication, all of that stuff. So like I see somebody being like, maybe a youth minister or DRE being like, I'm going to do this with all my catechists, or I'm going to do this with all my staff. And we're all going to share our temperaments, and I'm going to take everybody through this list of what are your overuse patterns, what are your triggers, and then have them share it with people. So people know what their triggers are. People know what motivates them. People, like other people can know. And so we're really improving this. I think I love that. That's such a tangible skill.
Yeah, we even did that over with the Ave Maria University women's soccer team.
It was great.
Recently. Whole team took the temperaments assessment, and then they walked through this exercise of the contributions and things like that. And the feedback that we got from one of the coaches was it helped her to understand how to communicate with certain members of the team that were a different temperament than hers, but also how to receive kind of, or like perceive the way that they acted, because there was a story that it was shaping in her head that was one that wasn't really bringing them closer in relationship. Now she's, okay, I can see this melancholic. This is how a melancholic tends to respond here. I don't need to make it mean anything more than this is just how a melancholic is responding, right? Doesn't mean anything about me. And so when you think about how that kind of mindset shift can just clean up a relationship, the temperaments are one of those things that I wish I knew more about them when I was younger.
Yes.
And I love now that as a parent, I know it about my daughter. At least we can have these conversations where it's just like, okay, she looks like she has this temperament. That means we need to create a space that looks like this.
Holding the space.
For this temperament to really thrive, for this person to really thrive.
Yes.
This was huge for me too, because I think even before I knew about the temperaments, I kind of just like thought everyone should think like me or act like me or want to be social like me.
Or that they did.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Or that they did. And so, especially with my husband dating at the time, so we are the exact opposite temperaments. I have 2 and he has the other 2. And so he would do things that would just blow my mind. I couldn't understand. And I just thought that he needed to be more like me, and then everything would have been better. And so really diving deeper into our temperaments, it's given me a totally different view of him. It's helped me to hold the space in different areas for him. And same for me. He's learning more about me. And instead of those things being something that we would clash about, now it's things that we can celebrate, that we do have these differences, but it's a beautiful complementarity.
I love that word.
Yes.
Complementarity.
And it's not something that needs to be divisive or even comparing, as if one temperament's better than the other, but it's the way that he reflects the love of God, in his unique way.
And that even rests on that Catholic anthropology again. The component, male and female, he created them. And John Paul II expands on this, not just being male, female, he created them in terms of the marital embrace, but there's this beautiful spousal analogy that we can look at through the reality of being created male and female, where we can start to see opportunities for complementarity of 2 different people, distinct people, different coming together, and there being a great fecundity, fruitfulness that comes forth from that, a great complementarity, and we see it here even with the temperaments as well.
It makes me think of like what's going on in the world today, and they're all like celebrate differences, but they're also trying to make everyone the same.
Yeah, the result's the same.
It's so like counter. It's so like opposite of what you're saying.
Well,
like
it's diversity is an end in and of itself.
Yes.
It's like, no, diversity is a means to the complementarity that we're talking about.
Yes. Yeah. I love that with the temperaments. It just brings about, it's the awareness first, the possession of your own temperament, and then like allowing others to kind of possess their own temperament. And not saying, we always say this, temperaments are not the end point. They're your kind of beginning point. They're like what material you have to work with to grow in virtue. And so in our podcast series, we kind of give you all of that information. We did not hold back. Mm-hmm. We gave all of the same stuff to our academy. So love it. Love it. So that's a tangible thing that you will get. You will also become a journal facilitator.
Yeah.
Which is great. You'll get like a letter of completion.
Yeah.
At the end of this.
People that go through the cohorts are going to have a much more in-depth prac app in how to lead somebody through the journal exercises. We give you the theory and some really like guiding step-by-step approach in Catholic Coaching Foundations in and of itself. But with the cohort on top of it, that's where you're really going to have opportunities to practice, right? And the practical application. So you're growing a competency. And with a growth in competency, there's a growth in confidence, right? We want people leaving this course going out and having experienced the transformation through the journal, but then being able to, like, feeling confident to go and start a journal group at their parish and walk other people through this process of coming to really be students of their own interior life.
And the journal, I mean, that doing that daily practice is a daily exam. And I have a priest friend of mine that started doing it as his daily exam.
No way.
And he was like, I'm really enjoying it. You know, it's been really great and fruitful. And I just think so much how many times that self-coaching, right? When we take it to the journal, we take it to prayer, and we learn how to best utilize and maximize the journal. It is so transformative, right? And when we're going to then work with others, we're sharing as witnesses of people who have been on this journey, who have experienced the transformation, and you're coming from a totally different place than just trying to teach someone something that you haven't experienced yourself. And so that's one thing I'm really excited about the cohort is we're going to nitpick these exercises. We're going to get really deep into them and give really some practical exercises of ways that you can go through this, and then you can help lead somebody else through these.
Yeah. We have podcast studies, okay? Because we're like, you don't need to buy a whole course to take people through this. All people need to do is purchase the journal. In fact, if they don't even want to purchase the journal, we have a free download. So like you could start a journal group tomorrow if you decide. And we have these podcast studies that Hannah, beautiful Hannah, never leave us, please. Hannah created, and it's kind of like a guide for the journal. So like for a journal group, those are also free that you will get access to with this, right?
That's right.
You're going to get access.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right.
I'm like, I always forget what I say yes and no to. So I just kind of am like,
you say
create
yes to
policies on podcasts.
Yeah. And this is what, like, folks, we have a kind of couching this in the greater mission. I mean, from the get-go, it was like, okay, what do we want at Metanoia Catholic? The grand vision is like, we want to see a Catholic coach in every parish. There's something that's beautiful in my mind of just having that subsidiarity approach. People taking care of the members of their local community, right? And this is why, one of the reasons why we're doing the coach training is because we want people to be able to bring this back to the local community, certainly the community in their family, like their nuclear family, but then also the people in their parish as well. Because the parish really needs to be a place of human formation. Some parishes are doing it. Most parishes are not. Most parishes are following the old model, which is a catechetical formation. But the reality is that the catechetical approach, and this is what I did my master's thesis on in college.
Here we go.
The catechetical approach. I know. Snooze.
Snore.
That catechesis-centered approach presumed a well-formed human at the foundation of it.
That's a big word.
Presumed a well-formed human at the foundation of it. But with the church with family life kind of eroding even post, industrial revolution, and
because the families were the main formators. That's why the church was presuming
you didn't have the formation there as well. At least the nuclear family started to kind of disband. And certainly now, where most families, or a lot of families right now, are they're broken families. They're families of divorce and multiple different marriages and kids from all different marriages. And this is the reality of where we are right now. But there's something that's been lost in over the last century, definitely, that where we need to find a way to reinsert this human formation element that's kind of, we can't presume it anymore, right? And if we do, we're going to continue to see the results that we're seeing right now. Churches that are on decline. They're not even maintaining their members because all they're doing is, it's an angelic approach to formation. They're doing catechesis, but catechesis comes really, it has to have that human formation foundation that's there first.
Yep. Yeah.
And if we're really seeing the people in the parish, if we're really seeing that there's this poverty and we're just expecting them to kind of jump up to this level to where we can start pouring out this, spiritual formation, intellectual formation, it's an injustice. We're missing the point. We're missing the person, right? And so I think it just speaks to the poverty there, but the problem isn't that they need to get somewheres where they're not. The problem is that we're not bringing our work down to them, right? We're not coming to the level of the person and starting there and allowing them to be on the journey too. So I just think that that's it's a really wonderful thing that I think that a gift that we're receiving here, this vision that we're receiving at Metanoia Catholic of how we can actually journey with people on this level so that then that soil is fertile and it's ready to be just dumped, those seeds dumped out on it.
I'll tell you what, one thing I've noticed, and I've certainly not arrived yet, I will literally work on the journal on some topic that morning and go coach somebody on it. Like that is how the Holy Spirit works. I remember getting on calls with people and being like I'm being formed literally hours before a person, like the person that I'm going to help form, like hours before that. Like that's how that is. Holy Spirit always works. He always works last minute for me.
Yeah, equipped to show up as a witness, like Abby was saying.
That's it.
And Saint Paul VI. Pope Saint Paul VI. Is that how you say it?
I don't know.
That's how he said it. Like we need to be witnesses, right? We don't need more teachers. We need to have witnesses.
But one more thing too, I want to speak to that because I got on a lot of calls, discovery calls with people who were interested in like our coach training the last couple of years, and there were a number of people who said they were a part of our academy, so they kind of became used to this self-coaching concept, using the journal as like the main tool for that. But they were like, I never even heard of this, and I'm a coach. And I was like, what? Like how do you feel confident at all? Like how is there any confidence? Is this kind of the jumping off a cliff and just learning how to fly on the way down? Because I can imagine if you weren't intentionally forming yourself and allowing the Lord to form you and like remove those obstacles of grace. Like if you weren't intentionally doing that, I imagine you were like, what the heck am I doing? Imposter syndrome.
Well, yeah. And that imposter syndrome is going to show up if you went through a formation program and that formation program didn't have a firm understanding of God's design, that didn't have that Catholic anthropology.
Yes.
Then there's to a certain level, there's a deformation that is taking place because the formation program in this case doesn't recognize God's design, right? They're going to have applications that are not going to conform to the reality of who we are. Again, this goes back to the Catholic anthropology of having that body-soul composite that's here as well, where there's an objective reality of who we are as persons, but also a subjective experience. And if we just go to the subjective experience, which is where you see a lot of secular programs kind of go that way, where it's just like, okay, whatever you decide, and to the extent that your reality is just something that is something more of your own subjective experience rather than an objective reality.
It's just becomes cyclical. You're a hamster on a wheel. Like how do you ever become transformed when you are the transformer? Like it just makes no sense.
Robots meet Transformers.
Yes. And that's one thing that I love about the drills that we chose for this cohort is that these are all exercises that we're going to be taking you through that are ways of helping you encounter Christ more deeply. Lectio Divina, these visual offertory exercises that we're going to be doing with the cohort. There's just emotional processing. We didn't even talk about that yet. That is a huge one.
Yeah.
And not just processing the emotion on your own, but really inviting the Lord into that conversation, into that experience with you. These are just like huge things. It's through a Catholic lens, which you don't find that really anywhere.
Every human needs to learn how to process emotion. I remember friends of mine were putting on a workshop, and there were all these people writing in and being like, are you guys counselors? Like, you're teaching people how to process emotions? Like, hopefully my mom taught me how to process an emotion, like when I was like 10 and full of them. You know what I mean? Like, you don't need to be a counselor to learn how to process emotions. Like, emotions are yours. They are your property. You need to know how to manage them, period. To be like a normal functioning human person, to have that affective maturity. I obviously get very like worked up about this, but I'm like, why has nobody taught us this? That's really what I'm thinking in my head. Now's your chance to learn this and to also help somebody come, like, bring it through it. Who would have ever thought that the process of processing an emotion could be the most beautiful, fruitful prayer? Who would have ever thought that?
Well, we resist it so much, you
That's
know,
it.
like we shove our emotions down. At least that's been my experience with the beach ball, of just pushing. And that's more resistance than just processing it and allowing that transformation to happen. The Lord to just pour out his grace and be with you in that emotion. Beautiful experience.
Another thing that we didn't even talk about yet is the unique call of sanctity. That's the very first thing that we do, right? We take people through that workshop. Awesome workshop. Can't really take credit for it. Once again, totally like the Holy Spirit there, but like really, actually, it was inspired by the strengths. Actually, I remember when we first started creating that, and I was like, oh, I love this talk about strengths. Like, wouldn't it make so much sense that the Lord is calling you to do the thing that you're good at? Weird concept.
Do the thing that he's equipped you to do in a very unique
that it could be fun and adventurous to serve him.
Right.
Well, this is like getting into that area of personal vocation. Again, expanding vocations is no longer mean just state in life vocation, but actually like a unique purpose, a unique
call,
identity. Like there's a call here, vocare, right? But there's a call by name. That name has it has an identity to it. And so this is even where we're going with our Metanoia Catholic Academy, is to really start to focus down. We've done a lot of work with relationship. We're going to continue to do that, but we also want to help people discover their God-given vocation as well in the academy, and then how to live it out in relationship. Because again, they go that Gaudium et Spes. Man cannot know himself except through the sincere gift of self. So that self-knowledge, the knowledge of that personal vocation, is something that you arrive at in and through relationship. Of course it would be. If it was something that we could arrive at by ourselves, we wouldn't need God. We wouldn't need the communion of saints. So God has a way of designing this so that we come to understand our unique calling. And folks, when I say unique calling, it is a unique, personal, by name. Only you have this name in all of human history, forever, for all eternity. It is deeply unique, it's deeply personal, and it is deeply impactful. The way that like the world is starving to hear this name preached out in and through your bodies as we learn to live in our vocations and do it in the form of self-gift in relationship.
I think of that quote by St. John Henry Newman, and I'm totally going to butcher it, but it sounds something like this. So this is like the Cliff Notes version, but it sounds something like, I have a unique call that only I can answer by God. Like, that's a part of it. And I think of that. And I think that's actually in our unique call of sanctity. That's one of the quotes that we have quoted there. But you think of that and you're like, okay, so the saint recognizes that. But what if you had a unique call? What if it was like God created every little gift? I was contemplating on this last night. I was always good at drawing. And I thought, how does that fit into my unique call? Because I don't think God wastes anything. I certainly think he's generous. But like, how does that artistic flair kind of come into this coaching world, like, do I like draw things for people? I don't know. I remember thinking that to myself. I'm like, and I'm just always blown away by all of these gifts and these desires that the Lord has planted into my heart long time ago, and how they're just coming out and starting to flourish with the mere yes, with just saying yes, Lord, yes, Lord. Okay, I'll go down this path. Yes, Lord. So you will learn how to take somebody through that unique call to sanctity.
Yeah, and I think of even how that artistic kind of ability of yours shows up in your coaching is Aaron uses a lot of guided imagery. She uses a lot, like a lot of painting pictures with these words and to really understand the meaning of things. And you've got a way of doing it that really is, it's a very right brain way of coaching to kind of get the whole person engaged on an emotional level. Because we live from these images in our heads, these imaginations. And that's where a lot of the work is going on when we're coaching, and mindset coaching is helping people to really see an image that is conformed to reality, not just a reality of the seen world, but a reality that is informed by faith and a knowledge that is infused into us by the theological virtues here.
Amen.
And I love how this kind of, I think, ties in deeper into the self-gift stage, if we want to call it that, of the journey that we're going to be going in with the cohort, with picking your niche. Right.
Yes.
And first, even having that awareness of your unique gifts, your passions, your mission, right? How much more clear are you able to know who are you being called to serve, right? So we're going to do a whole workshop on picking your niche to help you gain clarity in what specific area are you being called to labor in, right? In the Lord's vineyard. And that's something I'm super excited about, because I know you helped me a lot with this. I needed some work on this whenever I was choosing my niche in the beginning. So I'm really excited to be
this is one of my favorite things to teach people. And we did see a poverty of this even when we were working in, well, I was still more actively in virtual Catholic conference, but like there were a lot of people with different ministries, and there were ministries who wanted to touch on everything. And I'm like, man, the Catholic world, like especially in the apostolates, the missions, like would so benefit learning how to just niche down so that their people know how to find them. Like they would just, this is the area. This is like my genius zone, right? This is where the Lord has really gifted me, and I love to live here. And I love to serve this target market or this type of group. It sounds very like marketing and businessy.
Well, and then I love to pass them off to this person that I know is like picks up where I leave off, because there's an on-ramp to your ministry, and then there's an off-ramp. If there's no off-ramp, nobody's not supposed in a niche at that point.
And they're also not supposed to just pitch a tent and stay there, right? Like that's exactly it. Like that is called stagnation. That is our kryptonite as coaches. Since this is our podcast, we say it's not allowed. But certainly you can stay in a ministry if you love it so much. That's so good. But even just thinking in the Catholic world, if you are a minister of sorts, like this workshop that comes alongside of joining the cohort is going to be so interesting for you to kind of dive into.
For yourself, but you're also going to learn how to guide other people through it as well, correct?
Not really. No. Not the niche workshop.
No. I was thinking unique call to sanctity.
Yes, okay. We're on the wrong one.
Unique call to sanctity.
Yes, you will learn how to guide others through the unique call to sanctity, which love seeing that process.
Just awakening that process for discovering your own vocation.
Yes.
And then creating a space at the parish for somebody to live out in their vocation. That's like the number one component of an engaged parish. I get to show up and do what I do best on a regular basis at my parish.
And
what I do
don't
best
have to
is
do
my
everybody
vocation.
Else's job. That's so freeing, right?
Yes.
It's
like
amazing.
it's so freeing
Yes.
when you just get to roll in your lane.
Yeah. For all you ministers out there that are just like, you know what? I love ministry, certain parts of it. And then it's just like, but I'm wearing so many different hats.
Yes.
Trust me, there is somebody that wants to volunteer to wear one of those hats that you don't want to wear in your parish. And there's something beautiful about that. When you can start to recognize it and you start give something, because the currency that I get to do what I do best on a regular basis, that's a currency of purpose.
Yes.
And that is a big crisis that we're experiencing right now, not just in the church, across the board. And we see it manifesting in depression and anger issues and addiction. is this that crisis of purpose that even Viktor Frankl talked about.
Think about when you're in flow. Like, just think about that. Think about how time flies and you're like, man, I just like love doing this. I'm actually kind of good at it too. And then think about blending that with actually serving God. Like, that is finding your unique call to sanctity. I think it's so beautiful. Yeah. So, yeah. So you'll learn how to do that. Then you'll go through the niche workshop and you'll learn that for yourself, actually.
All right. So we're kind of hitting our hour mark here. We're getting close. But tell me, ladies, what is the, anything else we need to kind of wrap up here? When's the next cohort starting?
Mm-hmm. Well, it's our next cohort starting December 1st, but we have a hard close cart on November 25th.
Black Friday, the
day after Thanksgiving. So if you want to be in on that first cohort, you want to get in by Black Friday because we're not going to have another one of these for another 5 or so months.
Mm-hmm. It's going to be a while. Yep.
Yes.
What I love about this cohort too is it's actually leading in to the certification. So we're having a certification our first official certification that starts in April of 2023. And this cohort is really going to wrap up right at the start of that. And so you don't have to go into certification, but the thing with Catholic Coaching Foundations is you actually get to apply your investment in Catholic Coaching Foundations as a credit towards your certification when you use it within 2 years. And so if this is something that you're looking to do, you can just take Catholic Coaching Foundations now, and then you can join the certification in the spring and really just continue on with that same group of people that you're going to be bonding with. I love seeing the bonds of people that happen in these cohorts as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Amen.
Cool.
Amen. Hopefully we'll see you guys there in the cohort. It's going to be awesome. It's just, we created this community out of a need, out of our own desire to be surrounded by like-minded, growth-minded Catholics and helpers, people who love to help others. And so, we are just so excited to meet you. So if the Lord is placing something on your heart, just go check it out. Go check out our brochure. And we have a brochure for this, right?
We do.
Yeah.
We do.
Okay.
Yeah. So just click in the show notes. So we've got some things and be able how you can check out that brochure for Catholic Coaching Foundations. Talk about the cohort there a little bit.
And reach out to Abby.
And yeah, Abby, thank you so much for being on here too.
Yeah,
that's even some download. I'm sorry, interrupting you. Download that brochure. You'll see some opportunities. Even schedule a call with Abby if you want to talk through some of this stuff and get your questions answered. But yeah. So happy to have you on the team, Abby.
Yeah, thanks. It's such an honor. Such an honor for sure.
I was just looking about how small you look because that chair is like down and then you're also like little wee petite. And I'm like, oh my gosh, we look like giants compared to her. So if you guys are watching YouTube, be sure to click that subscribe button and ring that bell. And if you're listening to our podcast, go over and subscribe at YouTube. You can actually see our facial expressions. You can see us.
You can see Erin's hair.
You can see my hair. You could see how much I like do this in my chair.
Swivel.
If you're just listening, you won't even know what I'm doing.
We're swiveling.
It's my ADD coming out.
There you go. All right. God bless. Thanks
for being
guys.
with us. Boy.
Hey, thanks for sticking with us in the Catholic Coaching Podcast. If you like what you heard,
please like and subscribe, and we'll see you again.